Good morning, students. We had almost reached to the climax of the scene. That is, we are entering into that most important trial scene. Okay, that is what we were all awaiting for, and that we are entering into that trial scene whereon Portia, the young learned doctor from Padua, enters into the court, and then how the Duke introduced her as a learned man being sent by Dr. Bellerio. And we know beforehand there was a disagreement between Bassanio and Shylock, and Graziano speaks volumes in order to bring a kind of little bit of a spark of mercy in the life of Shylock. And then even they conclude that Shylock has the spirit of the wolf because all his inclinations are wolf-like. He is so greedy, bloodthirsty, and rapacious. And Shylock laughs at Graziano's outburst, and he says that he is injuring his own lungs and all that, wasting his own youthfulness and all. And then the Duke permits the clerk to read the letter from Dr. Bellerio, and we know how the Duke welcomes Portia disguised as in the suit of a doctors of law. Give me your hand, come you from old Bellerio. So Duke very politely invites Portia, asking that you come from Padua from Dr. Bellerio. And to this Portia, so very cordially, very with lots of politeness, says, I did, my lord. And the Duke welcomes him. You are welcome, take your place. Are you acquainted with the difference that holds this present question in the court? Here the difference means the disagreement between Antonio and Shylock. So the Duke asks, you take your place, and are you acquainted? Are you aware of the nature of the dispute involved in the present case between Shylock and Antonio before this Venetian court? To this Portia says, I am informed thoroughly of the cause, which is the merchant here and which the Jew. So she said, I am given the fullest information about the case, about the dispute, about the disagreement between the merchant and Shylock. And now she asks, who is? Which of these men is the merchant and which is the Jew? Antonio and old Shylock both stand forth. So Duke said, they are just in front of you. Here is Antonio and old Shylock. So Portia asked Shylock, is your name Shylock? Shylock is my name, Portia. Of a strange nature is the suit you follow. Yet in such rule that Venetian law cannot impugn you as you do proceed. And turning to Antonio, she says, you stand within his danger, do you not? So Portia confronts to Shylock saying, the suit, the dispute which you have brought, the case that you have brought here is a strange one in nature, and yet it is such that the law of Venice cannot take steps against you. For the course you follow, the Venetian court cannot stand against your plea, your application. And you, Antonio, you are liable to his penalties. So to Antonio, he says that you are liable to this penalty for your forfeiture of the bond. So Antonio says so humbly, yeah. So he says, Portia, do you confess the bond? And do you agree that, do you admit that you have made such kind of agreement that you are willing to give a pound of flesh if you fail to pay back 3,000 ducats in 3 months' time? So Antonio agrees even to that, and he says, yes, I do. Then must the Jew be merciful. So she said, in that case, if all these things are true, then I only plead that Shylock be merciful. then the Jew must show mercy and compassion to Antonio. So Shylock becomes so furious and he says, "On what compulsion must I? Tell me that." So he says, "What is that compels me to be merciful? Tell me for what case, for what sake I must be merciful to Antonio." And then Portia calms down the spirit of Shylock, saying, "The quality of mercy is not strained. The quality of mercy, the attribute of mercy is not something that is being forced upon somebody, that is not being compelled by somebody. Mercy is a blessing. It cannot be compelled. The nature of mercy is not something you do under force, under compulsion, but it is a blessing. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed." Now he says it comes freely as the gentle rain falls from heaven upon the earth, and it cools the earth. It cools, the rain falls upon both the good and the bad alike. And so she says the mercy is also likewise the gentle rain that falls from heaven upon the earth. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. So mercy is, it is doubly blessed. It is blessed twice. How? It blesses the person who shows mercy and also him who receives it. The one who receives and the one who gives are blessed. So it is twice blessed. 'Tis mightiest and the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute of and majesty. What do you mean by, children? It's mightiest in the mightiest, meaning most powerful in the man with most power. So mercy is so powerful than the mightiest, most powerful weapon that most powerful men have. The strongest men will ever always have mercy as the powerful weapon. God, the Almighty God, what is his weapon? Being merciful. So the mightiest, the weapon of the mightiest is merciful. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. So she says it is better than the crown of the monarch, the king. And the power of the king, for him, the best quality of the king, the royal king, is to be merciful than his own crown that he wears. His scepter shows the force of temporal power. What is the scepter? What is scepter, children? Here the scepter is a rod which a king holds in his hand. Symbol. You must have seen how the kings hold a scepter, a rod, symbolizing his royal power. The king's scepter is the outward symbol of his earthly power. Outward symbol of his earthly power. Mark it, children. Scepter is the outward symbol of his earthly power. It gives him awful majesty and fills his subject with the dread and fear of him. And the attribute of and majesty. So the scepter, which is the symbol of his earthly power, emblem of his worldly power, reminding men to give due respect to the law and majesty. It symbolizes men, it awakes in men a kind of respect for the law and majesty. And then Portia says, beyond all this power what it is, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings, but mercy is above this sceptred sway. So it is much more than the scepter that awakens in the men to be respectful towards law and its authority, but mercy is above this sceptred sway. Mercy is above the mercy is something that is more above this earthly power. It is a noble thing. It's a noble quality. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings And it is attribute to God himself. It is an attribute which we give to God himself. It is the attribute, the face of God himself. Mercy is the face of God. And earthly power that then shook likest God's when mercy seasons justice. And the power of kings is most divine in its working when justice is mingled with mercy. When justice is mingled with mercy, the king also acts like the divine. And that's, and she says, now she connects all things to God. She says, therefore Shylock, though justice be thy plea, although you are asking for to be just, to be, you are wanting to be, show justice to you. Consider this, that in the course of justice, none of us should see salvation. So Portia says, if strict justice were to be meted out to all, if strict justice were meted out to God, none could enter heaven. Because we live because of God's mercy. We all pray to God. She says, what is that same prayer? We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer that teaches us all to render the deeds of mercy. We pray to God for his mercy, and that the same prayer which we make to God should teach us to show mercy to others. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea. I have spoken enough. I have spoken enough to you, dear Shylock. And press on for bear justice in the case which of thy follow the strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there. Now, if you go for justice in this case, but to forego his legal rights and to reason justice with mercy, if to go with justice, that the sentence be given against Antonio the merchant here. To thus, without any kind of relent, Shylock says, my deeds upon my head, I crave the law, the penalty and forfeit of my bond. What he is saying? My head, okay? My deeds upon my head. I will take the responsibility for what I am doing. My deeds upon my head. I take the responsibility of what I am doing. I crave the law. I stand for law. I desire for the law. I desire justice, the penalty and forfeit of my bond. The forfeit of my bond. So he says, I ask for the penalty allowed by the law, which has become due owing to the breach of our agreement, breaking of our agreement, the failure of his agreement to pay back the bond. To this Portia says, is he not able to discharge the money? So Portia again trying to bring down little bit of mercy in the heart of Shylock, and he asks Shylock, is he not able to pay you the money? To this Bassanio says, yes, here I tender it for him in the court. Yeah, twice the sum. If that will not suffice, I will be bound to pay it 10 times over, or forfeit my hands, my head, my heart. If this will not suffice, it must appear that malice bears down truth. Now he says, I am ready to pay him twice the capital amount. I'm ready to pay. I'm ready to pay even 10 times more than. Even 10 times more than I'm ready to pay. If I fail do so, if I'm unable to pay that, I forfeit my hands, my head and my heart. If this offer is not accepted, then it is clear that a spirit of malice is working against the truth. A spirit of malice is speaking or working against the truth. And I beseech you, I pray you, rest once the law to your authority to do a great right, do a little wrong, and curb this cruel devil of his will. Now he is requesting to the learned doctor I request you to use your power on this one reason to change the strict course of the law. At least once you change the strict course of the Venetian law to do a notable act of justice. Commit the slight irregularity, commit the small mistake for the sake of Antonio, and deprive this cruel devil of his desire, and let the desire of this cruel Jew not be satisfied. So he's telling, do some kind of concession to the law. This Jew will never relent, never give mercy. He is a merciless man. But if you can do some kind of relaxation to the law of Venice, to the Portius, it must not be. She cannot give any kind of relaxation in the law. There is no power in Venice can alter a decree established. An already established decree cannot be altered. There is no power in Venice. It will be recorded for a precedent, and many an error by the same example will rush into the state. It cannot be. So if I permit the such kind of relaxation to the law, it will be placed as an example for the errors that is yet to come in the future. So it will remain an example. It will bring lots of errors and faulty things into the state. So it cannot be. So she says she cannot make any kind of relaxation into the law, into the Venetian decree. Shylock, a Daniel come to judgment. Yeah, a Daniel. Oh, wise young judge, how I do honor thee. Now Shylock is so happy that he felt that Portia is doing some good job, that at last he is going to get justice done. So he says, a Daniel come to judgment. Actually, children, this Daniel is a prophet in the Bible, whereon a great Jewish character, Daniel is a great Jewish character in the Bible, who was known for his wisdom and judgment. It is in reference to the story of Susanna, a Jewish girl, where the two elders accuse her of her chastity, being having illicit relationship, and then they blame her and they want to put the Susanna into death. It is there when all the elders gather to put blame on her and to stone her to death. Daniel raised his voice, and because of his wisdom, the innocent blood of Susanna was saved. Now here Shylock is taking the example of Daniel, and he says, here a Daniel has come to give justice to me. I do honor. So now he says, I honor you. You are someone who is wise like prophet Daniel. To this Portia says, I pray you, let me look upon the bond. She said, let me see the bond, the agreement that you have made between the merchant and Shylock. And Shylock gives the bond and says, here it is, most reverend doctor, here it is. Portia, Shylock, this thrice thy money offered thee. So she says again, she wanted to bring down the arrogance of Shylock and says, see here, the thrice amount of your money, 3 times more than what you have paid. Now tear off the bond. To the Shylock says, an oath, I have an oath in heaven. Shall I lay perjury upon my soul? No, not for Venice. So he says, in the sight of God, I have made an oath. Perjury means sin of oath breaking, perjury. So I have made an oath before God, and I don't want to break the oath that I have made before God, and not for Venice. I don't want to this kind of breaking of my oath to God for the sake of Venice. So this Portia says, why this bond is forfeit? Why this bond is forfeit? This bond is forfeit. It means that the agreement has been broken and the penalty must be paid. Now she is speaking. Now she is giving the final words. She says, this bond is forfeit. The agreement has been broken and the penalty must be Now there must be a kind of tug in the court, whereon all thought some a kind of an angel has come to save Antonio, but here she says the bond is forfeit. Now the bond is forfeit since Antonio has failed to pay back the 3,000 tickets he had borrowed from Shylock. Now it means that when it is paid according to the terms of this bond, Antonio would have been saved, but here Antonio has failed to pay in time. And to this, Shylock says, when it is paid according to the tenure, according to the time, it doth appear you are a worthy judge. You know the law, your exposition hath been most sound. I charge you by the law. The tenure means actual wording and meaning of the terms of the bond. When it is paid according to the tenure means the actual word of the bond, it doth appear you are a worthy judge. Now you are going by the bond and you are a worthy judge. You know the law, your exposition, your understanding of the case seems to be sound. He felt happy about it. And I charge you by the law, whereof you are well-deserving pillar. You are a well-deserved pillar here, meaning support. Proceed to judgment. Now you proceed with the judgment. By my soul I swear, there is no power in the tongue of man to alter me. I stay here on my bond. There is no power, no man can alter my decision. I insist on the strict terms of the bond. To this Antonio says, most heartily I do beseech the court to give the judgment. So Antonio also says, most heartily I do beseech the court to give the judgment. Portia, why then thus it is, you must prepare your bosom for his knife. So be ready, be ready, be ready. He says you must prepare to have your bosom cut by the knife. Shylock, oh noble judge, oh excellent young man. So he is all praise for Portia. And to this Portia says, for the intent and purpose of the law hath full relation to the penalty which here appeareth due upon the bond. For indeed, the meaning and scope of this particular law cover such a penalty as is inquired by this agreement. To the Shylock says, it is very true, O wise and upright judge, how much more elder art thou than thy looks. So you look so young, but your wisdom is much big. You are a wise judge. So wise and upright, you are so wise and upright. Your wisdom is greater than one would expect from your youth. And then Portia says, therefore lay bare your bosom, uncover your bosom, keep your chest ready. To the Shylock says, yeah, his breast, so says the bond. Doth it not, noble judge? So the bond says that, is it not noble judge? Nearest his heart, those are the very words. So Shylock becomes so very confident, and he says it is from the nearest of his heart the bond of flesh be taken. To this Portia says, it is so, are there balance here to weigh the flesh? So she asked, have you kept ready with the balance to weigh the flesh? The Shylock says, yes, I have them ready. I have brought the balance to weigh the pound of flesh, exact 1 pound of flesh. To this Portia says, how by some surgeon, Shylock, on your charge, to stop his wounds, lest he do bleed to death. Now, Portia is so very clever. She asks, have you got a surgeon here so that when you cut his breast, it should not bleed? Arrange for a doctor to be here at your own expense, Shylock, to stop the flow of blood from his wound, lest he bleed to death. Now, to the Shylock says, is it so nominated in the bond? It is not been written in the bond. He says it's not written in the bond. It is so that I have to do it myself. So Portia says, It's not so expressed, but what of that? It were good you do so much for charity. So, Portia says, no such conditions being laid in the bond, but what after all? What is that after all? Is it good that you should do such an act of kindness? It is good that you do such act of kindness. To the Shylock says, I refuse. I cannot find it. It's not in the bond. So he says, I refuse. I cannot find such condition in a agreement. To this Portia says, come merchant, have you anything to say? So Portia asked Antonio for the last words from Antonio, have you something to say? So Antonio gives a very heart-touching speech here. So very heart-touching. He says, but little I am armed and well prepared. Give me your hand, Bassanio. Fare you well. Grieve not that I am fallen to this for you. For herein fortune shows herself more kind than is her custom. It is still her use to let the wretched man outlive his wealth, to view with hollow eye and wrinkled brow an age of poverty from which lingering penance. So Antonio says, I have very little to speak. I am armed with spiritual strength and I am prepared for this. Give me your hand, Bassanio, and fare you well. And he says to Bassanio so lovingly, do not grieve. Do not grieve that I have incurred this for your sake. You shall never think that I am dying at the cost of your own debt. You should never think that I am dying for your sake. For in this instance, fortune is treating me more kindly than she usually does to men. So he is ready, so spiritually ready. He shows that fortune is treating me as more kind as often. It is often her custom to let the wretched man live on after his wealth has been lost, so that his fellow eyes and wrinkled face show forth his poverty-stricken condition. So fortune does all these. Okay, so he says the fortune always often it is customary for the fortune to let the wretched man live on after the wealth he has been lost, so that his hollow eyes and wrinkled face show forth his poverty-stricken condition. And then he says, lingering penance, an age of poverty, from which lingering penance of such misery doth she cut me off. Commend me to your honorable wife. Tell her the process of Antonio's end. Say how I loved you, speak me fair in death. And when the tale is told, bid her be judge, whether Bassanio had not once a love. Repent not you that you shall lose your friend, and he repents not that he pays your debt. For if the Jew do cut but deep enough, I'll pay it instantly with all my heart. He says to Bassanio, tell or give my regards and respect to your honorable wife, and tell her the manner in which Antonio had his death. Tell her how greatly I loved you. Tell her about our relation, how I loved you and how you loved me, and speak well of me. You must tell well of me to your wife after I am gone, after I am dead. You must speak good of me to your wife. When you have told her everything, ask her to say whether Bassanio had not a truly loving friend. And ask her whether Bassanio had a true friend in Antonio. Let your only regret be the loss of a friend. You should only be regretting that you lost a dear friend. For I have no regret in making this sacrifice for you. If Shylock the Jew only cuts deep enough, it will be quite true to say that I have paid with all my heart. I am ready to give up my life for you, Bassanio, and I happily give my life for your sake. And if he cuts deeply, it's okay for me, because the deep cut is for love of Bassanio, a true love, children. So it's so very touching And that shows how beautiful a relationship was between Bassanio and Antonio, a true friendship. To this, Bassanio says, Antonio, I am married to a wife which is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not with me esteemed above thy life. I would lose all, sacrifice them all, here to this devil to deliver you. Now to this, Bassanio also says, my wife is dear to me, dear even to my own life. But I am ready to give up all that, my wife, my life, for your sake, because you are much more dear to me than all my own life. I am ready to sacrifice them all here to this devil to deliver you. And to this, Portia says, your wife would give you a little thanks for that if she were by to hear you make the offer. Now here, the beauty of the play. Who herself, Portia herself, the wife herself is telling, if your wife were to hear this, I doubt whether your wife would thank you for that offer if she were present to hear you. Now it goes on, children. There is still more. I think we stop here and continue on the next day. All the best. Keep well. God bless you. It has come to the 10th situation, and let us hear it, let us learn it in the next class. God bless you.